Hello guys and welcome to day number 8 of Global Chess League 2025. We have this day today and we have tomorrow, and then we'll have finals and the third place match on Tuesday. So without further ado, let's start by taking a look at the first game played between Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Gukesh. Dommaraju, they played in the first leg, and back then the game ended in a draw. Gukesh played with white pieces. Now the colors are reversed, meaning that both teams change the colors and now play against each other. So I've got Mamba Masters against Alaska Knights. So let's see who won the match. So c5, knight f3, d6, Gukesh is going for Sicilian defense, and we have Mamedyarov. I believe Maxime faced Mamedyarov in this tournament already. I think I analyzed. You can let me know if you watched the previous recaps. I don't remember who he was playing against, but he played Mamedyarov, and I don't think he played Bishop e3, I don't remember. I think he played Bishop e2, or maybe even, I think yes, g3, and I think he played against Fabio or someone. I can't recall. So e5, knight goes back to f3. So the main idea, let's say here, is to go knight b3. That's like one of the main lines, and then pawn goes to f3, king e2, and so-called English attack. But knight f3, okay, this move exists, but it's not as popular. Bishop e7, bishop goes to c4, castle, castle, and now knight c6. Rook goes to e1, bishop e6, trying to trade bishops off the board, knight d5, b5, now takes, and bishop d5. It's all pretty standard at this moment. I mean, the position is equal, bishop d5, king d5, and now king c7. The idea for black would be to try to get rook to d8, protect the pawn. For white specifically, the plan might involve swapping this knight with queens, potentially. They wish they can do it, and then they might fight for a slight edge. For black as well, knight a5, knight c4 becomes an option as well. So let's see what Maxime did. So he plays c3, which is quite common to avoid knight b4 ideas, to avoid knight d4 plans. So that's good. Rook d8, and now a4, immediately trying to create chaos on the queen side. So now knight goes to e7, attacking the queen, queen goes back, and now king c6. Honestly, let's say here king c6, yes, probably best. So the idea for black right now, at any moment they would try to push d5 as soon as they can, basically. d5 here doesn't necessarily work due to a takes b5, and let's say d takes e4 intermed, so it looks like the pawn is being taken back, but now we use the pin on a file and win the rook, so it's not a possibility. So king c6 first, now d5 becomes an option. So takes, rook a8 takes, and now h4. So d5 here, I mean, necessarily won't work, just because you kind of don't want to weaken your e5 pawn. I would still bring rook back to d8 if you want to push d5 this badly. But okay, d5 is played on the board, bishop g5, d takes e4, rook e4, and the position is still around equal. g3, rook d8, queen e2, and now h5. Computer says it's a serious blunder, but why? So the thing is, what Mr. Gukesh missed, and what Maxime missed as well, is knight e5. And apparently you can't take this way because of bishop d8, and if, let's say, knight e5, you can take on e5 first, and you protect the bishop, and if bishop takes, you take on d8, and you're just simply up a pawn. So, not sure what was going through their heads, especially with 10 minutes on the clock, like knight e5. Okay, I can't say it's an easy move to find, but at the same time, like on this level, I believe those players should be able to find these moves. So rook b4 is played instead, trying to put pressure on b5. Rook d5 is played, bishop f6, g takes f6, and knight h2, setting up threats against h5 pawn. Pawn goes to f5, queen h5, and now e4. e4 actually looks logical. You know, computer says it's a mistake, almost a decisive mistake, but it looks logical. You want to play e3. And now Maxime plays rook d4. So takes, queen c1 check, knight f1, f4. So he is trying to, again, create something on this king side. Because if he manages to push f3, I can imagine that position might become complicated. Queen b5, pawn takes, and now king d1. Now again, trying to help its pawn to move forward, queen e8, but unfortunately it was taken. And of course now it's just a matter of, you know, concentration and confidence. So yes, I mean, completely winning position for white pieces, but you gotta be precise at all moments. So king e8, king g7, h6 first, king h6, sacrifice all the pawns this moment it was kind of complicated to play. Because look, the players are low on time, the position, I mean, you know, you might blunder some knight f3 and then, you know, queen f1 plans. So queen f7, which was played, still I would be kind of, you know, cautious here with both, I mean, primarily with white pieces, just because, I mean, black are not really trying to win, they're trying to make a draw, while for black they might find some chances to make this game a draw, just because, let's say, knight f3, queen goes to g1, there are chances, there are certainly some chances, because king on g1 is still somewhat not safe. I mean, if we had one more pawn, then yes, let's say pawn here, I would say yes, it's a winning position, but otherwise it's still a little bit complicated for white to convert. So king g6, knight goes to f3, queen f4, knight h4, king goes to g5, king d2 check, king g4, and now look, I mean, black are getting close. King f2, finally something on the board, and now knight d3. And of course now you gotta check. King d1, knight f3 check, king d6, and now it kinda, yeah, transposed to a winning knight endgame where Gukesh doesn't really stand a chance and Maxime takes a win. In the second game I want to show you Shakhriyar Mamedyarov was playing against Leinier Dominguez. That's the same match, I believe. Upgrad Mamba Masters versus Alaskan Knights. Leinier is playing for Alaskan Knights. So c4, c6, knight f3, d5, d4, knight f6, and we get classical Semislav defense position, d takes c4, p5, a6. So, you know, Shakhriyar, because I can't say I'm a huge fan, but, you know, I've been watching how Shakhriyar plays on top level for a long time. Yes, now he's not in the elite of chess, but he was, let's say, 10 years ago until, let's say, 2020, until the COVID hit, because now obviously he got old, but back then, you know, it's a guy who consistently puts a lot of pressure on you. He's playing very aggressive chess, and, you know, his style is, you know, I mean, very, very good. You can just Google his games. I mean, I really enjoyed watching his games back then. It, you know, was like, let's say, an idol besides Magnus, and I actually managed to meet him in Toronto in 2024 during the candidates. I couldn't play him, but, you know, we were sitting beside each other during the event, just because he was playing on board 1 versus I think he was playing against Chiparinov, and I was playing on board 2 versus who did I Evgeny Bariev. So that was, and on third board, Alexandra Kosenyuk, who is another participant of this event, played her game as well. So it was, you know, quite fantastic for me. Like, you know, just a regular guy who plays just for fun. It was kind of good, and I mean, memorable moment of my life. So e4, bishop b7, bishop f4. So Shakh sacrificed the pawn. He has, you know, this nickname Shakh. So he sacrificed the pawn, but the point is, we already saw something like this. I think Arjun played against Anish, and it actually paid off. So let's see if Shakh can put sustainable pressure on his opponent. So g6 is played just to make sure, let's say, this bishop develops anywhere. So, but bishop goes to e7. The idea is, if bishop g7 never played, bishop d6, and it becomes kinda tough to defend this position. Bishop h3, king goes to a5, knight g5, and now b4 attacking the knight on c3. So knight goes back to e2, king d5, offering a queen trade. Now queen goes to f3, and now short castle. e5 and c5 counterattacking the queen. So actually that's quite a fascinating position, where now black become completely winning, like in a matter of like couple of moves. It also shows you that sometimes the dynamic of certain positions, you just gotta understand them, and, you know, one mistake and you might be lost. So until this moment, short castle, Shakhriyar had a good advantage, but here he needed to find bishop f1 or knight g3. Point is, yes, he played, you know, I can't say bad move, but e5 looks very logical. You want to push the knight from f6 square. Knight h5 is obviously not an option, just because I believe now you kind of have to deal with a lot of ideas. But c5 and knight e4, and suddenly, I mean, now you probably have to, and Leinier is trying to get as many pieces off the board as possible. So you might wonder why not queen e2, because, I mean, obviously e takes f6, even though I think queen e2 is still possible, but I think queen h4, and then there's just too many troubles to deal with. So king f3, bishop g5, and now knight goes to b6, and knight goes to d5. Or let's say c4. But knight d5 is possible just because queen f4 walks into knight c3 ideas. So bishop f6, knight f6, she takes f6, and now guess what? Skittish is coming, so you gotta be careful. But knight d5, and now queen h6, the pawn takes on f6. And now it's tough to play. But still, knight f4. The idea now is to sacrifice and at least make a draw. So bishop f4 is played, and now c4. So c4 is multifunctional move. c4 threatens some c3 or b3 plans, but it also connects the queen with the queen side potentially. So knight h5 ideas become impossible just because of queen h5, and you also kind of keep an eye on everything around here. So king h4, king goes to g7, and now d5 disconnecting the queen. Looks very smart, and I completely agree. c3, f3 takes, and now queen c4 sacrificing the bishop on e4 square. So takes, king c3, and now b3, and guess what? This king is wide open. They're just, I mean, attack is unstoppable. King a2, king a5, rook comes, second rook comes, another rook is coming, takes, rook f3 takes the queen and wins the game. Now we move on to the next match. Leinier won. Great game by him. Anand Viswanathan with Ganges Grandmasters is playing against Alireza. Firouzja, who won first 5 games but then had some problems along the way, made 2 draws, went 1 draw against Hikaru and lost 2 games against Mr. Gukesh and Mr. Fabiano Caruano. But now he's back to competing against ex-world chess champion Viswanathan Anand. Bishop plays e4, and we have another Sicilian defense now with bishop b5. Very interesting. Let's see what Mr. Firouzja got for us. So c3, knight f6, because I played this line with black, so I'm kind of interested in what he's going to play. Bishop g4, hd, bishop h5, d4, takes, e6. So white get an active center, black get a pin, black get 2 bishops, around equal. So e5, queen goes to b3, bishop e7, sacrificing the pawn on b7, knight d7, knight c3, and now finally b5, making sure this pawn is protected. Knight goes to f1, knight c5, king c2, and now rook c8, setting up some b4 ideas, and then, you know, some discover attacks on c file. So castle, bishop e3, bishop g6, creating threats against e4 pawn, king d7, f3, and now a5. So king d7 not only threatens f5 at some point, but also supports b5 pawn. That's why a5 is now played, and b4 plan is coming up. So bishop h4, making sure this knight is going away, and then you're trying to play f5. So bishop f2, a4, knight b3, creating a beautiful outpost on b3 square. King goes to d3, rook c4, making sure this pawn is protected. Rook goes to d1, rook c8, rook f1, h6, knight e2, knight c5, king d2, bishop d8, and bishop reroutes itself either to b6 or a5 and trying to create pressure against this knight. So we got knight c1, bishop a5, knight a2, and now f5, bishop f5, king e2, knight b3, bishop b3, knight d4, king f2, knight c2, and you kind of see that Alireza feels comfortable. I mean, his pieces are beautiful placed, while knight on a2, knight on c3, I mean, this is just horrible, creating a lot of weaknesses around the king. So bishop b6 takes, and now knight goes back to d4, knight b4, and now the position is somewhat okay, but here Alireza finds a beautiful bishop hd. So rook on c4, we kind of saw the same motives in the last game when Leinier kind of helped his queen stay, you know, connected with the king side, and here this rook potentially is being involved on the king side and tries to checkmate this. So knight c6 takes, rook c6, queen b8, king h7 takes. Queen h3 is a mistake because after rook d2 apparently, you know, it is safe for white pieces. So before is played a takes b4, a3, trying to shake this c3 knight. Now rook c8 attacks, now takes, queen d3, and suddenly after king h8 it turns out that the position becomes nearly lost. Knight e4, rook goes to b4, which is a mistake. So what Firouzja suggests is to play rook d4. Rook d4 I think is good for several reasons. Let me show you a beautiful tactic. Let's say queen e2, rook d2, now you gotta take with knight, because if king d2 you have queen f1, king f1, and b1 promotion. So you kind of have to be extremely careful. So And now if rook d4, this takes. I believe there is rook c1, there's gotta be rook c1, or there is king g3, and then if king h1, apparently it loses on the spot due to rook c2, so you gotta play king g2 and queen f4, and black are putting sufficient pressure to win the game, even though it's still not that clear, like plus 1.5 for black. I mean, it's not as huge. So rook b4 is played, but now queen b1 was a final blunder, because here Alireza delivers the second brilliant move of the day, queen f1, and now king f1, you play rook c1, and if queen f1 b1, so I mean that's the main line to analyze. So rook c1, rook d1, rook d1, and then takes b1, queening this queen probably has to takes, and now king e2, rook b5, and black are up 2 pawns and exchange, and of course win the game. And we move on to the last game that I'm gonna show you in this recap. So Javokhir Sindarov versus Vidit Gujrathi. e4, e5, Javokhir with white pieces, will be playing in the candidates. I'm telling this in every single video because it's, I mean, I'm just very happy to see youngsters competing against the elite. So a4, bishop a7, knight bd2, now pawn goes to g5, bishop g3. That's actually became one of the most popular, you know, lines in Italian recently. You kind of play aggressively from the beginning. I remember at some point, you know, there was a candidate when, even back when Kramnik was playing, was either 2018 candidates or 2016 candidates, where Kramnik played the same thing, or Livon played the same thing with black, and they just crushed white pieces without chances. Like, I can't remember, that was a surprise for many people that you can play like that, but yes, I mean, back then it was a huge surprise. Now, of course, it's all, you know, on the level where computers would tell you what to do, but back then, of course, it's a little bit of, you know, surprise for most of the players. So g4, we have bishop h4 on the board. Computer thinks it's a mistake, but at the same time, like, you kind of want to put a lot of pressure here, and f3 takes f3, which might be played, queen f3, and then suddenly there are some ideas. Knight f1, knight g3, knight h5, skittish. Bishop g4 can never be played due to bishop f6 and queen g4, so it is a little bit complicated. So knight to7 is played by Vidit. He's trying to reroute his knight to g6, so bishop f6, king f6, knight h4. Like, what the hell is going on, you might ask me? I mean, that's how people play these days. So we have knight g6, knight f5, takes, and now king goes to f5. I mean, what on earth is happening? Like, like how? I mean, that's just hilarious. That is just hilarious. d4, d5, and we have bishop d3, e4, and bishop e4. That's what we kind of should expect when king is walking all the way to f5. I mean, you gotta expect some sacrifices. But the problem here for, let's say, white, yes, they sacrifice the piece, but at the same time, like, king might potentially move back. But after knight d4, look, king cannot really return anywhere because the knight performs a good blockade. And now still, you gotta be extremely careful with white pieces, just because, I mean, this bishop doesn't really work, so you kind of have some time to figure out what you can do here. So knight h4, pawn goes to h3. Now if g takes h3, queen h5 probably wins the game immediately. So king g6 was played, and the idea is, of course, to bring king back to h7, and h3 was a serious mistake. So the best move here apparently is to play knight g3, and now king g6, you take on g4, king h7, and yes, despite black having an extra piece, this position is slightly better for white pieces, just because of a lot of pawns and the vulnerability of black's king. So it is complicated to play. So instead we got king g6, and now f5. Knight goes back, king g5, he takes f5, king h7, and now rook e4, potentially attacking the knight and trying to play rook g4. So rook g8, we got queen d3, again knight f5 is not really possible due to rook f5, and white wins the game. So rook e8, f6, rook e4 takes, knight g6, king goes to b7, threatening to take the bishop. I mean, just a lot of pawns here. King c6, rook e1, rook e7, king d5 takes, rook e6, and we transpose to an endgame where, let's calculate the pawns. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3. 4 pawns for the piece. That's more than enough to win the game, and as you might see by the evaluation, that's correct. So a5, and also look at the bishop. I mean, it's no better than the regular pawn. So a5, f7, knight h5, rook e8, and takes the piece back. And now, of course, for grandmaster of such level, I mean, just a matter of time when he converts it. Not how, but when. So d5, d6, knight d4, knight helps with support, f3, king f2. This pawn is beautiful, this pawn cannot really be taken, rook b5. And now takes, rook h5, rook d2. Support in the pawn, rook h2 is not really a threat, because you might go simple king e1, then king 2, king d1, king c2, if checks continue, pawn promotes, and white wins the game. As far as results go, I mean, we're moving very close to the end of the event. So Upgrade Mamba Masters were led by Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, lost to Alpine Energy Pipers in the first match of the day. Then Triveni Continental Kings, led by Alireza Firouzja, won against Kansas Grandmaster 14-5. American Gambits lost to Alpine Energy Pipers with 1 point difference, 7-8. It was a close and interesting match. And then Upgrade Mamba Masters played the second match of the day versus Alaskan Knights, which was ended with Alaskan Knights winning the match. And as far as standings go, let's check them out. So Triveni Continental Kings, most likely, if they, I mean, yes, I think they have clinched this final spot. So it's just a matter of who is going to compete against them in the finals. Alpine Energy Pipers, probably the favorites to get the second spot. Upgrade Mamba Masters, Kansas Grandmasters, Alaskan Knights. And guess what? Alaskan Knights, who started the event very slow, they now have the chances to potentially be on that second spot and compete in the finals. While American Gambits and Hikaru Nakamura are lost. I mean, at this point, they're dead lost. So it's interesting to see who is going to be on top. We have final round robin day on Monday and the finals on Tuesday. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you tomorrow up to day number 9